All right, good morning, everybody. This is James Morse, Thursday morning show on Ask the Master Auto Technician. It's a beautiful day out there. Summer is here. Boy, the days are long. It's so nice to come to work when it's daylight outside. Now, I've got on the phone right now Rob Lapham calling all the way from St. Joe. But, Rob, aren't you an hour ahead of us right now? So you've had a daylight for over an hour now, right?
Well, yeah, it is Eastern time where I am, but I think the position of the sun in relation to where you are and where I am isn't probably much different. But yeah, we are all on daylight saving time, and presumably permanent, right? We're not going back this fall to.
I don't know if they're going to do it or not. I'd like to see just have one time change, because I'll be honest with you, I don't know if everyone feels that way. I do. I get tired of changing the clocks and getting used to it. It seems like that first 2 or 3 weeks after you do a chime change just really drags on, and I just prefer to keep things the way they are and muddle through what I'm used to and get over it. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, Hawaii doesn't change its time, and Arizona doesn't change its time.
Yeah.
They seem to do just fine.
I think Idaho's another place, that parts of Idaho that don't change. But the point being is, we made the rule. We voted to allow this to happen. Now it's up to, I guess, the federal government to allow us to have this right to keep our time at a certain time. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the Federal Department of Transportation is the agency that is tasked with time. Although it's measured by NOAA and other agencies, the Naval Observatory and so forth. But anyway, I think something has to come down from DOT to make it official. And I don't know what the status of that is, but you started it off. You're sort of pointing to more daylight, and we got as much more daylight as we're going to get up till about a week from now. And then here's a depressing thought, James. A week from now, the days start getting a little bit shorter incrementally. So winter's coming.
I know, and I'm already starting to get depressed thinking about it. You know, here it is, June, and any day now it's going to be end of the year.
Yep.
Now, last week you were talking about Horowitz and the Judicial Department and some information coming out. And I've been hearing bits and pieces, and and it's kind of like I don't know really what I'm hearing. And you have some clarity on this, I understand, or you think?
Well, I think so.
All right.
As we said last week, lots of people did not know who Michael Horowitz was, or they thought the name was familiar but couldn't place it. And he was and is the Inspector General at the Department of Justice. And since January of last year, right after Trump began serving his term, he began his look into the Hillary email scandal. And so he's been at it for, 18 months now. His report, reportedly, will be posted on the web sometime this afternoon, 500 pages.
Ooh.
So this is not a little thing. And we may expect him to address Comey, McCabe, former Attorney General Loretta Lynch, and, of course, our two favorite lovebirds, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. And when you look at those 5 or 6 people, there's probably some other people, but those are the main characters. And all of them, those of us that have been following this, have done things they should not have done. And I expect most, if not all of those shenanigans to be revealed. And now the interesting thing is how fast it will take 500 pages to be digested and reported on by the part of the media that's not corrupt. So if you take, for example, Fox News, I imagine they will put at least 5 researchers on that 500-page report. And you do searches. You go to search for Strzok every time Strzok comes up, and that researcher just focuses on that. And they combine all of their research into like one-pagers for the personalities on TV. And as fast as, I don't know what time it gets posted. If it doesn't get posted until 5:59 p.m., then the special report with Brad Bader can't report on the facts. But you can believe throughout the evening tonight, all of the salient points of Horowitz's document will be spread across the media. It'll be also interesting to see what MSNBC and CNN do or say, or how they downplay it, because they don't want to talk about a document that frankly will support pretty much everything that Trump has been saying for the last year plus. So it's going to be, I imagine, a pretty big vindication for him.
Well, now,
And
so has to do with the Russian thing as well. Does it cover anything on there? Because I don't know much. I haven't been following it.
apparently it did spread out to that towards the end. I'm not really sure. It was commissioned to get underneath the Hillary email scandal. So that's going to be the major focus. Did the FBI act properly in taking what evidence they had and pursuing it? So, whether there's, and of course, the investigation of Trump, the so-called Russia collusion, that actually started at the FBI in June or July of 2016, if I recall correctly. So it was already underway when Horowitz began his research into the Hillary email thing. So it certainly could include that, but I don't think it's the main focus. I do think, however, that there will be criminal referrals. I think that all of Comey and McCabe and Lynch and Strzok and Page, I think they're all going to be portrayed in a fairly bad light, and people are not going to be happy with what they see. I don't know how the left is going to spin this. I also don't know how the Hollywood screenplay writers are going to play this, because there's going to be a lot of good stuff in there for made-for-TV programs, but it doesn't fall into the leftist narrative. I mean, if it was a conservative administration that had done all this terrible stuff, you can bet your bottom dollar that every screenwriter worth his salt will be writing up. Again, you got a lot of grist with 500 pages. That's a massive report.
It does sound like it's got a lot of information in there. It's just amazing how some of the things that are being done by this administration would have been blown up as a wonderful, wonderful thing in the last administration. So we see a lot of partisan bickering back and forth. But one thing I am seeing is I'm starting to see different split factions, I guess is the right word, factions, starting to say, you know what, maybe we were wrong about what's going on. Maybe since we do have low unemployment, maybe since we have more people getting jobs, we have the gross domestic product is rising. We've had the Federal Reserve raise the interest rates, twice so far this year?
Right.
We're at 2% now as of yesterday, where it's been as low as 0.25%, if I'm not mistaken. In the past, so we were up to 2% right now. So that means they're trying to do it to keep inflation under 2%. But I'll be honest with you, inflation, as best I can see it, measured from me, it's about, I would venture to say, 3 to 5% yearly. If I go back for a 10-year period and see what I bought 10 years ago and what I can buy now in the automotive industry, there's about a 20 to 30% increase in prices over the last 10 years. So if they're saying we're only having 2% a year is what they're shooting for, I think they've done an extremely good job of getting that 2 to 3%, if not more. But that's just my opinion.
I think he has. I think the challenges will become progressively more difficult as far as inflation is concerned, because the reports coming out now are saying that the numbers of jobs that are unfilled, numbers of jobs today in the United States that need someone to do them, is a larger number than the people who are on unemployment. The economy is so good, and so what happens there? It's good in one sense because employers will bid up the price of labor, and so paychecks are going to go up. But at the same time, the inflationary pressures are going to be even stronger. So you mentioned the Federal Reserve and two mini rate hikes this year, each of 0.25%. So until yesterday, the conventional wisdom was that there would be 3 rate hikes by the Fed this year. And starting yesterday, they started saying there will be 4 rate hikes. Now, there may just be 0.25%, but there's no question that the economy is going gangbusters, and the Fed is beginning to be very concerned about the prospect of high inflation.
Well, I know the thing about people have short-term memories. Rob, you and I have both seen this, but it's the boom bust. It's the boom.
I have early Alzheimer's. So that's my excuse.
I think the older I get, the more I seem to be having forms of it. My wife asked me something, said, "Don't you remember that?" And I look at her and go, No, I really don't. And I just, I don't. I
It
just,
probably was to do with one of your chores.
well, let's not go there. You know, it was. So maybe it's just convenient forgetfulness. But one of the things I'm just kind of curious about on this part about inflation is, or what I got a feeling that, like you said, as inflation creeps up, there's more people working, but it takes a lot more to buy because you got a lot of dollars searching for fewer products out there.
Right,
And that's what and with the boom bust cycle. We have seen this. I have seen this when I got out of high school. We were in the middle of a recession. 1980, we were still in the middle of a recession. We've had several recessions since 1980. I opened my business up, and we've seen, I think, 1988, we had a stock market crash. We had another one 10 years later. It's been 10, 11 years since the last correction of the stock market. And if you go back 50, 60, 70, 80 years, you see the same cycle happening all over again. I think we're due for another bust. If I see correctly, by next year, the year after, we're going to have it where we heat it up again, and we're going to have, well, it's probably going to be something like the student loan bubble. Or, what is it, $1 trillion bubble right now? They say it should be popping where people are defaulting left and right on it. And maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just reading too much in it, but that affects my business, everybody out here. We remember the Great Recession of 2007, and here it is 11 years later, and a lot of people are just now getting out of it. This has to be one of the longest recessions I've ever experienced. I don't know about you, but it just seems like it's been a real long one. Hope we don't have another one so quickly that stays around. That's just my opinion on that. So we got about 2 minutes left. Rob, any comments that you may have about where we're going as a nation with inflation?
Well, of course, I don't have all the answers. If I did, I'd be in the White House probably. But I think the inflationary pressures in part will be held in check by goods from China. I know the president is with his steel and aluminum tariffs, which is not going to affect China too much. But we have this big trade imbalance. I don't know what's going to happen about that. But in the meantime, the Walmarts of this world are going to continue to be flooded with relatively cheap goods from China, which we will buy, and that will act to keep our inflation, relatively speaking, in check. If we didn't have always cheap product flooding the U.S., things would be much more expensive, and we would have more rampant inflation. So there's a good side to everything, and it certainly is not good for us in the long run that we are exporting less than we are importing. That is bad for the country. But so many other good things are going on, James. I'm very optimistic for the future.
I am too.
And I can't wait until the report is released this afternoon, I guess.
Well, it is a conundrum. I'm sure the news media out there is going, how do we blast this president even more when everything's going so good? It just can't. I think they're having a little trouble trying to spin this. But we'll find. We're gonna. I tell you what. Get me another bag of popcorn. This is interesting to watch. I am just amazed what's going on. But it is, I see what's going on. Well, we can't do much what's happening in Washington. We can do we can affect what's happening locally. So I want to, if you're watching, please, if you live in a city, a county, which we all do, go to the county meetings or go to the city commission meetings in your local area. You'll be surprised what's happening right in your local neighborhood that you can be a part of, be assisting. And maybe, like I said, maybe assist him. I went to a Callaway meeting the other day. It's amazing what's going on in Callaway. And I don't even live in Callaway, but it's just amazing what I'm seeing happening in these little small communities around town. Lynn Haven, Callaway, Mexico Beach. That right there, they're trying to get fire protection from Bay County, which is something which they haven't had in forever. And I think I see things happening in Bay County. We're growing, hopefully in a positive direction. Hey, Rob, I got to go. I'm up against the clock. Thank you so much for calling, and I hope to hear from you again next week, okay?
Thanks, James.
All right, talk to you later, Rob. Bye-bye, everybody. Summer is here, and the days are getting longer and hotter. Call James Auto Center for a free cooling system evaluation and consultation. Give us a call, 850-763-0555 today.
Part of what I'd like to let you know is what we do and how we work our system. Basically, we've got about 700 stocking dealers scattered around the 15 counties here in the Big Bend area of the state. I run a fleet of trucks, vans, and what we call a hotshot vehicles to deliver to our dealers quickly so they can help service you as fast and efficiently as they can. Provide timely and efficient service, and we're there to take care of our dealers, who in turn can take care of their customers.
If you want the best deal in town for tires, you need to call Baytown Tires at 873-8900.
Hanson and the guys at Baytown Tires take pride in serving Panama City for over 20 years. Baytown Tires on Highway 98 in St. Andrews. All service work backed by a nationwide warranty.
Water is too powerful to fight alone. Mr. Router Plumbing. Sink, shower, and toilet emergency drain services.
If you want the best deal in town for tires, you need to call Baytown Tires at 873-8900.
Hanson and the guys at Baytown Tires take pride in serving Panama City for over 20 years. Baytown Tires on Highway 98 in St. Andrews. All service work backed by a nationwide warranty.
All right, welcome back to the show. This is James Morris. Something I've talked a lot about direct injection engines over the years. Direct injection engine, if you do not know what a direct injection engine is, I'm going to give you a short little spiel how it works. A direct injection engine is designed a lot like maybe a diesel engine is. If you know anything about diesels, you know they have an injector that sprays directly into the combustion chamber at high pressure fuel to bust it off. It doesn't put it on the back of the valves. It injects directly in the combustion chamber, just like a diesel engine, giving you more power, more performance, less emissions. That's right, less emissions. That's why they came out with the direct injection engine, is to meet EPA requirements of lowering CO2 emissions. I know CO2 is what plants use and we exhale, but the point I'm trying to say is at idle, you can't tell any difference between a non-direct injection engine and a direct injection engine when what's coming out the tailpipe. But going down the highway, there's a lot less CO2 coming out the tailpipe. That's what the purpose of a direct injection engine is. Besides, you get better gas mileage. You got 12-to-1 compression ratio in a direct injection engine. A diesel engine has 22-to-1 compression ratio. A regular aspirated engine, gasoline engine, usually 8 to 8.5-to-1 compression ratio, whereas a direct injection engine is at least 12-to-1 compression ratio with pop-up pistons. That's right. All you race car enthusiasts out there, when we were kids, pop-up pistons meant you had an engine that would shake and rattle and act like it was, missing, but, that was one of those high-performance engines that were just, they sounded awesome. But we can't have that in a passenger car, so we have direct injection engines that are very smooth, offer lots of power. How can you, with turbochargers on especially, it's the only way I know you can take a 4-cylinder engine, completely stock, from the factory, put a turbo on it, and that engine will put out over 250 horsepower, get 30 to 35 miles to a gallon, and will outrun just about any V8 engine out there from 0 to 60 miles per hour. Pretty impressive. But here's the drawback with direct injection engines. We've heard all the goodies about the gas mileage and lower emissions. The drawback is you get what's called valve overlap on this right here, and that means both the intake valve and the exhaust valve are slightly open at the same time. What that exhaust valve is, allowing hot exhaust gases to be moved back over that intake valve. Now, when that happens, it bakes on deposits on the back of the intake valve, allowing that valve not to seat properly because there's carbon built up in it. That's one thing that happens. The other thing that we're seeing on some of the General Motors engines out there, the 5.3 I'm seeing, there's a national back order on injectors. We're wanting to replace the injectors because the injectors are having a problem. But I've been able to, but here's the catch, what I'm finding out. If you can find a shop that has a machine called a motor vac machine, there is a 2-step process that we're seeing good results doing this. We're taking the same engines that the dealership is taking the injectors out, throwing them away. They're on national back order. We got customers running around this town. They're waiting. I don't know how long they're going to wait for injectors before they are available. But if they can bring them to a shop and have them do an air induction cleaning with intake valve cleaner, I've we've talked about that before. It's something you spray down the throttle body, you know, where the butterfly is while the car is running, and put almost the whole can in it and let the car sit for, they say at least an hour. I like to let them sit for 3 or 4 hours. The longer they sit, the better. And then fire the car up and drive it like you stole it. Well, I know that sounds kind of hard, but that's what we're doing. That carbon has now gotten soft, and we're hoping to break it off and let it pass on through the car. It's not where it's going to do any damage to the engine. I mean, you may hear it rattle around when it comes loose, and the car may miss and spit and sputter. We hear that all the time. But that will take care of that intake valve problem. That's where that's something that will take care of that carbon. But we're still getting problems with the injectors acting up. They are actually they're not spraying right. So what we're getting is a P050D as in dog. That is a new code out there that I've just recently seen on General Motors, and it's rough running when cold. And normally that happens during the first 1,000 RPMs of the engine. They'll get a misfire. And what we're seeing, and we've seen it happen, where we'll see all 8 cylinders misfiring. All 8 misfiring. Wow, how can that be? When we're on the vehicle specific, on a scanner tool, we're looking at it going, man, I can't believe it. 2, 4, 6, 8, they're all, cylinders 1 through 8 are misfiring intermittently here. But after about 2 minutes or so, the engine smooths out, and we occasionally see a misfire every so often. And so that's when we'll prescribe, I guess like a doctor here, we'll prescribe where we do intake valve cleaning, where we ingest this product that will actually soften the carbon up on the intake valves and remove this carbon when we drive it to go away. Then we add the second layer. After we do this, we actually hook up where we're actually putting our fuel in place of the car engine's fuel. We're putting this special fuel that's got injector cleaner in it. And normally what I was taught in school, it will only clean a little spot on top of your piston where it comes down, and it really won't do a very good job on cleaning the injectors. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Wrong answer. It will work cleaning these injectors. We did one a few days ago, and we got all the misfires out when it started. And we tried the intake valve cleaning, and that made it some better, but it just still there. It was the injectors themselves causing the problem. They weren't spraying a good pattern. After it ran for about 30 to 45 seconds, it smoothed out. But what we ended up doing was cleaning actually in the injectors. I was told, James, you're wasting your time doing this. When I first learned about this back in 2013, 2014, you'll just waste your time cleaning the injectors with your motor vac machine. It won't really work. Well, wrong answer. We have found out that motor vac machine is one of the few pieces of equipment that I've got in my shop that fixes cars without me doing anything other than hooking it up. It's probably the most incredible piece of repair, diagnostic, maintenance equipment that any shop could have. So if you're having a drivability problem and you've put spark plugs in, you've put coils in, you've done all these things, and you know your fuel pumps, right? You've done all these things, and the car has periods where it misses and spits, even if it's not a direct injection engine, even if it's not. Especially when it's cold. I've seen Ford engines that have carbon deposits on the back of the intake valve, just like on direct injection, do the same thing. When you start them up, they misfire. They run because there's so much carbon on the back of the intake valve, it absorbs the gasoline that's being sprayed into the combustion chamber on the back side of the intake valve. I've seen, normally intake stems are about the size of this pin. Well, I've seen them so carboned up they're about the size of my thumb. That's how much carbon is on that stem. And that's what it's called, the valve stem, and going down to the tulip where the valve itself, the valve face is. It'll be as thick as my thumb with carbon, not allowing air to be drawn in and not allowing fuel to be drawn in. That's why the car will run, miss, stutter, have loss of power. You'll be surprised how many cars are starving for air. Not gasoline, air. They get all the gasoline they want. Well, I shouldn't say all they want, but they can't, it's all carboned up inside there. And we actually proved this by taking a borescope, snaking it down through the valve cover and watching what's going on, and showed customers their intake valves are as thick as my thumb. Yeah, and they go, well, I had a tune-up on it. I had an air induction cleaning done on it. Well, yeah, but if you don't do it correctly and use the right equipment, or I had people say, well, I put injector cleaner in my gas tank. I remind them, anything you can put in your gas tank, if it was strong enough to really, 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 really clean the injectors like it's supposed to, would tear up your fuel pump. I know. I know it sounds hard to believe, but that's why we have a machine. If that was the case, then I could take this chemical I use and put it in your gas tank, and it would clean your car while you drive it. It doesn't work like that. This stuff doesn't burn. When I put it in my machine to run, and once it hits that engine, the engine doesn't want to run. It spits, it sputters because it starts to dissolve that carbon. And this stuff that I put in here is not flammable. It really isn't. So when it gets up there to where the injectors are, and it's mixed in with gasoline, the gasoline's flammable. This stuff is inside there to keep, it's kind of like a solvent that gets inside there and breaks that carbon loose and starts to melt it. It actually dissolves the carbon. And when it acts up, when it gets to it, we've had them come in that we crank it up. We'll try to start the car when it's cold on my equipment. With this chemical, it won't run, it won't start, we can't get it started, so we have to take off the equipment, fire it up on gasoline on the car, on the engine with the gasoline. Now it doesn't run extremely well, but it runs pretty smooth. We'll get it to operating temperature, shut the car off, hook my machine back of it, and while it's at operating temperature, fire that puppy up and hold those RPMs about 2,000 to 3,000 RPMs. And as that chemical gets to it, that thing starts to miss and spit and sputter and shake and doesn't want to run. We keep those RPMs up. Finally, like someone turns a light switch, pop, and all of a sudden, boom, and it runs good. Well, it runs better. And then for the next 30 minutes to an hour, we're running it on this equipment, and it's getting better and better and better. And to show how much better it runs to my guys, I have a vacuum gauge on my machine. And to show them, we'll plug it, find a good vacuum source. We'll see we got 17 inches of vacuum at idle. That's not bad. I like to see it higher than that. We'll put the motor vac solution on there, and we'll watch it go from 17 inches to 17 and a quarter, 17 and a half, 18 inches. We'll have them where they're 18 and a half to 19 inches of vacuum sitting still, no load, in neutral, which is pretty impressive that they'll do that and run like they're supposed to. And we'll see that the vacuum improves as the valves are sealing properly, as the rings are working like they're supposed to, because this stuff that I'm talking about will actually dissolve the carbon that's keeping the rings together, maybe making you use more oil than you should be. It will dissolve a lot of the things that are in the combustion chamber, even cleans the catalytic converter. That's right, it cleans it. How can it clean the catalytic converter? Well, it gets in there and it allows that solvent to get in there and to actually burn that. It loosens it up, that hard carbon or the restrictions in there, and allows it to catch on fire and pass through the system. That's how it works. It actually promotes the combustion. Itself by itself is not combustible. You can't put a match to it, it won't fire. But when it's injected with gasoline, vaporized, it actually helps her promote the combustion to allow things to burn evenly, to clean off, to dissolve. And that's what's so amazing about it. And we don't have to do anything invasive. We don't have to tear anything apart. One of the easiest, nicest machines I've had in the last 20 years. When I found out I bought one 20 years ago, I had to buy another one immediately just to have two in supply here. So if you got a car question, you're going to have to wait till tomorrow morning when I have Hanson Hindenburg on here, or Mark Sarlo answering automotive questions right here on Ask the Master Auto Technician on Fox 28. Bye-bye, everybody. Summer is here and the days are getting longer and hotter. Call James Auto Center for a free cooling system evaluation and consultation. Give us a call, 850-763-0555 today.
Fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah!